Welcome back to Firepower. Today we're diving into one of the biggest political reversals in modern gun rights, something so unexpected, so bold, and so potentially explosive that it could upend the most significant federal gun control law passed in the last 30 years. And no, this isn't a rumor, this isn't a prediction, this is a bill that has already been introduced in Congress, a bill designed to defund, dismantle, and disable the most controversial pieces of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. If this bill succeeds, it won't just change regulations. It could pull the plug on the federal funding pipeline that has quietly encouraged red flag laws across America. It could stop the expanded background checks for young adults. It could claw back federal power and hand authority back to states and individuals. And the most shocking part, it could do all of this almost overnight. This is the Second Amendment Restoration Act of 2025, introduced by Texas Congressman Wesley Hunt. And the implications are massive. So today, we're breaking down exactly what this bill does, why it matters, how it fits into the bigger 2A battle, and what you as a gun owner should know right now. But before we unpack this new bill, let's rewind the clock and understand how we got here. In June of 2022, in the emotional aftermath of the Uvalde tragedy, Congress passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, better known as the BSCA. It was marketed to the American public as a reasonable, centrist compromise, something that would make communities safer without trampling constitutional rights. For many people, that pitch sounded comforting. But for folks in the gun community, the people who read the details instead of the headlines, the reality looked very different. The BSCA didn't just adjust background checks, it expanded them, especially for adults between 18 and 20, creating new delays and deeper investigations. It didn't just offer support to states, it incentivized them with federal funding to adopt red flag laws. And it didn't just update federal resources. It strengthened federal oversight, giving Washington a larger footprint in what used to be local and state-level decisions. And while there were parts of the BSCA that had broad support, mental health funding, school safety initiatives, the backbone of the law leaned heavily toward expanded control, expanded monitoring, and expanded federal influence. 3 years later, the results speak for themselves. Schools are not significantly safer. Mental health systems remain overwhelmed, but the federal pressure on lawful gun owners has only increased. That's why this new bill, this Restoration Act, arrives not as a symbolic gesture, but as a targeted strike against what many believe went too far. So what does the Second Amendment Restoration Act of 2025 actually do? First, it cuts off federal incentives for red flag laws. This is huge. Under the BSCA, states that passed red flag legislation could tap into federal money that critics argue acted as a political bribe. Red flag laws allow courts to seize firearms based on accusations, often before the accused has a chance to defend themselves. Supporters claim they prevent tragedies. Opponents argue they violate due process, allowing punishment before any crime is committed. This new bill would end all federal funding for red flag programs. If a state wants a red flag law, it can pass one. But taxpayers around the nation won't be forced to subsidize it. Second, the bill eliminates the expanded background checks for 18 to 20-year-olds. Under the BSCA, these young adults, legal adults, face extended waiting periods and deeper investigations, even if they have spotless records. The Restoration Act argues that if you're old enough to pay taxes, serve in the military, sign contracts, and vote, you're old enough to buy a gun without being treated like a second-class citizen. Third, The bill claws back funding aimed at expanding the NICS background check system. The BSCA poured money into widening federal influence over state-level processes. The Restoration Act pulls that back, aiming to restore what supporters see as a healthier balance between federal oversight and state autonomy. And it's important to understand, this bill does not erase all of the BSCA. It doesn't touch school safety funding. It doesn't remove mental health support. It doesn't undo victim protection programs. This is not a scorched earth repeal. It's a surgical rollback aimed specifically at provisions that gun owners believe threaten constitutional protections. But the big question is, why does this matter so much? Why should gun owners and even people who don't own guns care about this fight? The first reason is due process. Red flag laws allow firearms to be seized based on the possibility of risk, not proven wrongdoing. In many states, the accused does not even have the chance to defend themselves before the seizure occurs. This raises major concerns under the Second, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments. By cutting off federal funding, the Restoration Act removes Washington's hand from the scale. The second reason is federal overreach. When Congress uses money to push states into certain policies, it undermines the concept of state sovereignty. It creates a system where compliance is purchased, not chosen. Supporters of the bill argue that safety laws should be crafted by states, not enforced by federal bribes. The third reason concerns the 18 to 20-year-old population. Thousands of young adults, law-abiding adults, face extended delays when trying to exercise their constitutional rights. They are trusted to vote, to drive, to marry, to fight for their country, but not to purchase a firearm without extra scrutiny. The Restoration Act confronts this double standard. The fourth reason is the impact on gun culture and commerce. The increased oversight under the BSCA has pushed many gun shops, clubs, and ranges into legal gray areas. Some have pulled back on sales. Some fear unintentional violations. Some worry about inconsistent enforcement. Rolling back parts of the BSCA would provide breathing room for lawful commerce. But here comes the million-dollar question. Can this bill actually pass? And the answer is complicated. The Senate requires 60 votes to advance major bills. That means bipartisan support, real bipartisan support, would be needed. The original BSCA passed because a handful of Republicans joined Democrats, but rolling it back? That's a tougher sell, especially with a polarized Congress. Still, the introduction of the Restoration Act signals something bigger, a growing backlash, a recognition that certain parts of the BSCA were oversteps, a shift in energy within the Second Amendment community. Even if the bill faces steep odds today, political landscapes change, elections shift power, public pressure changes minds, and major reversals often begin with a single bill. So what can gun owners and anyone who supports constitutional rights do right now? First, contact your representatives and senators. Tell them where you stand. Many lawmakers only see the pressure they're given. If they hear from you, it matters. Second, share information. Let others know what the bill does, what the BSCA's hidden impacts are, and why this fight matters. The more awareness grows, the more pressure builds. Third, support pro-2A organizations, GOA, SAF, FPC, NRA, currently rebuilding its structure, NAGR. These groups file lawsuits, lobby Congress, and fight in ways individuals can't. Fourth, get involved locally. Town halls, candidate forums, community meetings, ask direct questions, put lawmakers on the record, and above all, stay informed. The biggest threat to the Second Amendment isn't always the new bill being proposed. It's the legislation already passed that quietly chips away at rights year after year. The Second Amendment Restoration Act is more than just political theater. It's a recognition that balance was lost and that millions of gun owners never agreed to the changes made under the BSCA. Whether this new bill passes or not, it marks the beginning of a larger fight, one aimed at restoring rights, not restricting them. If this breakdown helped you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Do you support the bill? Do you want a breakdown of how your specific state would be affected? Your voice matters, and the conversation starts right here. Until next time, this is Firepower reminding you to stay aware, stay engaged, and above all, stay free.